Hello readers, and welcome to a special spooky book chat. My name is Leslie and I'm the reading machine coordinator for Monterey County Free Libraries. The whole month of October, my book chat videos will be dedicated to this one book. It's called 4 Past Midnight. It contains 4 stories or novellas, and each week we will talk about a different one. It is by Stephen King, Master of Horror, who I know you have heard of. So before we dive into the first story, I want to tell you a little bit about this book. It was published in 1990. That was a whopping 31 years ago. All 4 stories combined add up to 763 pages. This book is a monster. It is huge. And it's my favorite of King's books, and that's part of the reason why I chose to cover it for this month's book chats. These stories are all really good and really creepy, and I highly recommend this book. And I also want to say that I haven't actually been following Stephen King's career for the past 20 or so years, so maybe there's better stories out there that I just haven't read, but this one was always my favorite until I was, like in my early 20s. So I did read these stories in high school over and over. They kept me transfixed every time. And that is just a reason enough to pick up this book. This is perfect for Halloween, and I'm excited to chat about these stories this month. So the first novella and that's the one I'm going to talk about today, is called The Langoliers. The story is 243 pages long. One of its big themes has to do with time. It's told from multiple points of view, and it has great character development, and that's something that Stephen King is really good at, is character development. So the story opens with Brian Engel. He's a pilot with the fictional airline company American Pride. He's had a really tough flight from Tokyo to LAX. And on top of that, right upon landing in LAX, he receives the really bad news that his ex-wife has died in an accident. And with that, he embarks on another flight right away. This one is to Boston. He's a passenger on this flight, and he has to go deal with the tragedy of his ex-wife's death. So as people tend to do on airplanes, Brian falls asleep. He is later awakened by screams. The screams are coming from a little 10-year-old girl named Dinah, and Dinah is blind. She can't find her aunt who had accompanied her on the flight, and in her fright, she screams and she wakes up everyone on the flight. The only problem is there are only 10 people on board, whereas when they boarded the plane, it was a full flight. So that's pretty curious, huh? That's kind of what The Langoliers is about. Where did everyone go? But The Langoliers is also about monsters. And according to Craig Toomey, who is this really unpleasant passenger on the plane, the Langoliers are monsters who come for lazy children. And here I'm going to read you the passage where they are first introduced. So this is from Craig Toomey's point of view. So Craig Toomey had been raised in his own dark trench, had lived in his own atmosphere of high pressure. His father had been an executive in the Bank of America, away from home for long stretches of time, a caricature type A overachiever. He drove his only child as furiously and as forgivingly as he drove himself. The bedtime stories he told Craig in Craig's early years terrified the boy. Nor was this surprising, because terror was exactly the emotion Roger Toomey meant to awaken in the boy's breast. These tales concern themselves, for the most part, with a race of monstrous beings called the Langoliers. Their job, their mission in life, in the world of Roger Toomey, everything had a job, everything had serious work to do, was to prey on lazy, time-wasting children. By the time he was 7, Craig was a dedicated type A overachiever, just like Daddy. He had made up his mind. The Langoliers were never going to get him. So that is where, obviously, the title of this story comes from. But it's worth noting that this story will reveal that the actual Langoliers are monsters who aren't there to prey on lazy people. They're just there to eat everything in their path. It's not personal. It's just what they do. And that's what makes them so terrifying, is that you could do everything right, and the Langoliers are still going to come for you. So throughout this novella, the Langoliers are like this menacing presence, and that all the characters can feel coming closer and closer. And each character can hear the sound of Langoliers eating everything as they approach. Okay? And that is as much as I'm going to say about this novella because of time constraints, but also because I don't want to spoil the whole thing. Just know that you want to read this story. It's full of delicious dread and disquiet. Perfect, perfect, perfect for spooky season. So, friends, that in mind, you should join me next week for the second novella in 4 Past Midnight, which is called Secret Window, Secret Garden. But in the meantime, keep your ears open for those Langoliers. See you soon, friends. Bye.